now.
I'm trying to hook up.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to a new edition of Real World News Radio. You have your host tonight, one of the hosts, Reggie Kearney, Sharon Tampin, and Derek Terry. How y'all doing tonight?
Tired.
Tired. Okay, you be all right. You're a young man. You can handle. But
Not after basketball.
tonight we want to look at some of the issues that continue to face African Americans here in this country, and basically it's a continuing injustice of the treatment of African Americans and maybe a lot of people of color by our police department. As you all know, recently the Eric Garner case came back to light, and the officer that had been charged with killing him was, I wouldn't say exonerated, was just let off the hook. Okay. The family did reach a almost $6 million settlement that the city of New York doing back in 2015. And you can clearly see from the altercation that the officer, in my words, did contribute, did kill Eric Garner. Okay, but as usual, officers in situations like this tend to uh, squeeze out of the wrong that they're doing, and it's becoming an ongoing. It seems like every time something comes up with the police department that involves the killing of African Americans, it seems like the police officers are getting off with it. Then when you look in, I think it was Wisconsin or Minnesota, where the officer of color shot a Caucasian female, he ended up getting, I believe, 12 years. So, I mean, it's out there. It's out there, and we know it's out there. What are your thoughts, Sharon?
I am so disgusted by this. This has me flashing back to the Rodney King verdict. Where you first had something caught on video, and the abuse was painfully obvious. I don't understand how they could be awarded a $5.9 million suit for wrongful death, but then not hold him accountable when two medical examiners directly related it to his chokehold. And then they're going to argue over semantics over what they're going to call the chokehold. One version, one name is legal, the other name is not legal. At the end of the day, that action caused his death. Over selling cigarettes. The man was unarmed. He wasn't harming anybody. You have pedophiles getting off. You have rapists getting off. You have people getting off every day, left, right, and center. And here they took a situation that probably could have been resolved with mere words and escalated it to the point where this man died. And to see the gross miscarriage of justice taking place and the failure of our system from top to bottom to give us justice and to give that family justice, it's just extremely disheartening, to say the least.
Derek, your thoughts?
I think for me, we try to put our trust in the judicial system, that everyone will be tried by a jury of their peers and that justice will prevail. For me, I think I've become somewhat numb, and because I've seen it so many times, and at some point it's like, okay, how mad am I going to get? And I'm actually more surprised when someone is convicted of wrongdoing versus when they're acquitted. I think for me, and what I want to definitely say is, like, I honestly feel that there's more honor and truth and good cops than there are bad. I think what upsets me is the silence when these cops know that these guys is crooked and bad, but because of the good old boy network, we're not going to snitch. And to me, and it may be a bad analogy, but if you know a person is raping or having intercourse with a family member and you chose to say nothing, then you're just as guilty as the person who did it.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where, we have to do better. And one way we can do that is, always through elections, because you can be able to pick the judges that will be fair. And, a jury doesn't always make the final decision, especially if the judge feels that you totally overlooked the evidence. So we just have to do better. And I don't know how we can change it right away, because a lot of times I'm like, what? I'm saying the evidence is right there. What were y'all looking at?
Yeah. It's like they spend more energy trying to justify it than see what is painfully obvious in front of them.
I agree, but back in the '60s and '70s, the African American community wouldn't tolerate such incidents as this. Okay, basically there would have been demonstrations, riots, whatever it took to get the attention of the city officials, let them know it's wrong. Now today we are not as aggressive as we once were, as far as protesting these injustices. Okay, we see it, we hear it, we comment on it, but we don't protest loud enough.
Or effectively.
Effectively, correct. And I agree with Derek. Yeah, we got to take care of the voting booth also. But I think we got to let our voices be heard a little more louder and let them know that we won't tolerate this mess. And I agree with Derek. It's not all the cops. There's a small percentage of them that are committing these crimes, but it's the blue code, whatever they call it, of silence, that they effectively abide by. Even if it's wrong, they abide by that code. And
I think for me, I think most people, all you want to do is be treated fair. So, even when you look at cases, I think there were two cases where there was two white gentlemen that were either they were accused of rape or sexual assault, and the judge said, well, you know what? Because they have no priors, because they come from a good home, I'm not going to give them jail time. Imagine if that was Tyrone or Leroy or Curtis. So I'm like I said, it doesn't make it right. I'm saying that you should get a charge, but to get a slap on the wrist for something that most people would get jailed for, to me, that's just total injustice and just a messed up judicial system all the way around.
Well, how are we going to expect fair treatment from police when criminalizing behavior has been monetized with prisons for profit? Putting aside the racism for a second, which only exacerbates the situation, they have a vested interest in arresting people for bullshit, pardon my French, channeling my inner Tony, for stopping people for nonsense and escalating situations to the point where they can then say they felt threatened or somebody was resisting, or any of this other catchphrase nonsense, this get out of jail free cards that they use. The system is, I almost want to say irrevocably broken, but I have to pray that it isn't. But getting rid of prisons for profit and monetizing this would be a step in the right direction.
But
it wouldn't solve it. It wouldn't solve it, but it doesn't help.
It wouldn't change anything because of the racism that goes on in the department. Okay, and I think what has happened since the guy in the White House has been there, and probably even before then, because a lot of stuff has happened. There's a group of people among the ranks that feel like they can do anything when it comes to people of color because they're going to get out of it. Okay. You take Castile when he was shot. I mean, he told the officer he had a gun in his car. Okay, he told him that because he didn't want anything to escalate and he get killed, but he still got killed. Yeah. Okay, after telling the officer and letting the officer know I have a gun, I have a legal permit to carry a gun, the officer still killed him.
Yeah, in front of his family. Yeah,
in front of his family, and got off.
And when I look at something like that, I don't know what the explanation is. I don't understand the rationale. And you know, people always say, well, you know, you shouldn't put race into it. How else can you justify it?
You seen the you seen the white boys getting killed like this?
And no, as they shouldn't. I'm saying no one should, but
Yeah.
Right, no one should. But
it's like, and I think Joe Madison, I don't remember how he says it. It's like we're undervalued, we're not appreciated, and you know, he uses these three things, but that's how I think some, and like I said, it's a small percentage view Black lives
But
as
who-
it's either my life or it's your life, regardless if you're a threat or not. If I get the hint that you're a threat, it's like for me, like a couple months ago, I got pulled over and I put my hands out the window. The cop said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I put my hands out the window so you can see." "Oh, you don't have to do that." I said, "Yes, I do." He said, "Why do you have to do that?" I said, "Because the last thing I want you to do is walk up holding your pistol." He said, "Well, next time don't put your hands out because I'm thinking you're doing something." I was like, "What's the difference if you come there and put a flashlight and you tell me to go to get my wallet? You're gonna see me, right? And you're gonna have, if it's just you and I, as a cop, I would put my hand on my pistol because I don't know what you're gonna do if you're pulling out your wallet. So by me putting my hands out, you know, you better off just saying, look, I'll tell you where it's at, you get it yourself." And I said, I'm just trying to get home. That's all I'm trying to do is get home. So it gave me a warning. It was for a headlight or my backlight or something. But
lucky.
I didn't know why I was being pulled over.
Yeah. Well, you know, we're demonized from birth. We're, you know, the country is told, we're indoctrinated to believe that as a race and in our totality, we're lazy, good for nothing, criminal minded, and capable of Herculean feats of anger and violence. So there's a presumption. Bodily, you are a weapon, whether you have one in your hand or not. There seems to be this innate fear that, I mean, look at the way they handle Black children and Black girls in bikinis. You saw that video last year with the girl being
Yeah,
manhandled and whatnot on the lawn in front of a pool party. You know,
totally unnecessary. Yeah.
completely unnecessary, inappropriate on so many levels. But she wasn't seen as a little girl. She wasn't seen as a girl or a child. She was merely seen as a Black entity that was capable of violence. And I think that that's all they see when they look at us sometimes. What shit are we going to
And
start?
and when I look at it, people say it's gotten worse. I said, no, I don't think it's gotten worse. I think it's remained the same. And the reason I say that, and in most, I guess we all can attest to this. We didn't have video cameras and cell phones back in the day. So imagine all the stuff that people got away with
Mm.
that wasn't even on camera, body
Oh,
cam and all the other stuff. Imagine that.
yeah.
Like me, you know, I was in Georgia. Imagine if this cop from Georgia had body cam when he pulled me up and put a gun to my mouth and told me, "Say one word, boy," because I had my same red Honda Civic that I've had since 1995. I crossed the South Carolina Georgia line and I get pulled over by a state trooper because of my tent. And it was one of I actually thought, I said, you know what? He's about to shoot me. Only thing that saved me was he got a call and the fact that I was in the military. Because when I pulled out um, my license, he saw the military. And if he had body cam, I'd probably be, you know, I don't know, sitting on the Riviera somewhere because it was unjustified. I'm saying all that for some tent.
I agree
And
with
I
you
had,
in part. Mm. I agree with you in part, with one exception. We did not have social media or the ability to videotape things as often as we do now, and unfortunately, it's a daily occurrence in multiples. But I do think that this administration has lent an air of permissibility about it. The current DOJ has sent a message, and they've made it clear that they put police officers first. The Bill of Rights for police officers, when we had a police officer on Cheryl, I can't remember her last name, on our show, and talked about they're not judged by Civilians, they're judged by fellow peers, and as you said before, the blue line of silence runs deep. But, you know, ever since Obama won, I think there's been a groundswell of resentment, and it just got worse under Trump. Were there always instances? I believe that wholeheartedly, but I do think that it's painfully obvious that this administration, and increasingly so in various municipalities, that they're going to allow people to get away with this. So there's even less, if there was any kind of a social barrier or something that might have made people stay their hand before, that barrier is gone now. It's been obliterated. You have grandmas calling people nigger in the street. I mean, I don't know that it would have happened with the frequency and the fervor that it's happening with now. They feel like it's their time.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, like for me, and I said it at the beginning, there are a lot more good cops out there than there are bad, but it really pisses me off when they're silent. I'm like, you know this stuff is going on. You know that guy or that female cop is bad, and you say nothing. You know what I wish, and I know in Charles County we do it a lot. Community policing, but you know when they get out there and they interact with the community, I said, because when you can do things like that, you regain the trust that is so lacking. And I think once you gain the community's trust, somewhere in that cop's heart, he has to say, you know what, this guy was wrong, because we work so hard to bring the community back to where we hope it will be or used to be, just to have you mess it up. So I think that when we talk about what is that we can do, you know, your respective community can say, you know what, we want y'all to be visible, not visible like it's martial law, but visible like, hey, how y'all doing? Blah, 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 having these conversations. Because you have to start with the kids, because what people don't realize is that first initial interaction with a cop, if it's bad, it stays with you for a long time. I mean, for a long time. And for me, I had a good interaction with a cop the first time I met one. So, and that was, I think I was in second grade. I don't know what it was. And I had those good interactions all the way up until I got to seventh grade, until I had an encounter when I was in Bel Air, Maryland, where, you know, basically the white boys was riding around in the skateboards. So they weren't loitering, but we was sitting there outside chilling, just having a conversation, and we're loitering. I didn't get it.
The other thing too, and I agree with you about the community level. I remember in the 70s, I used to say hello to my local police officers, and I knew them like I knew my local firemen. But that changed somewhere along the line. But I also think that, what do they say? The fish rots from the head. We also need to make sure that the chiefs and the lieutenants, the heads of each of these precincts, are on board with this philosophical approach. Because at the end of the day, they're also ones that are meant to hold their people accountable. You know, we've seen multiple instances over the last several years about whistleblower police officers who got fired for complaining about racism within the ranks or abuse of authority. You know, even this guy Pantaleo had a number of complaints about him. Clearly, he was protected. If anybody had taken those complaints seriously before and reprimanded him or fired him, Eric Garner could very well be alive right now.
Okay, when we can look at a number of cases, recent killings. You look at Eric Logan in South Bend, Indiana. That's where Louis Pete is from, who's running for president. How in the heck can you run for president and you can't even control your own city and your police officers? You know, the last poll showed he had 0% of the black vote, which is good. But this officer kills Eric Logan, who's 54 years old, because he gets a call that there's somebody breaking into cars on the street. He gets into the area and he says Logan turns around with a knife, so he kills him. You know,
because at a distance, a knife is that much of a threat.
Yeah, a BS.
He could have tased him from 12 feet away. How is that?
Yeah.
How is that death worthy?
But
death
it's
sentence
BS.
worthy? Yeah,
It's BS. It's BS. It's BS. Then you have Jamari Robinson, 26, who was shot multiple times, 76 bullets entered into his body, in August of 2016. He refused to open the door of his girlfriend's home when officers knocked. Police then kicked the door down and began firing. See, that's the BS that goes on with our police officers, okay? And police officers, if you're watching, don't get me wrong. But what I'm upset is that you keep allowing your fellow officers who are bad to continue on doing bad.
Mm-hmm.
And they continue to use black men as target practice, okay? If your wife don't give you no loving that night as a white officer, you're gonna take it out on a black man the next day. And that's the attitude of a lot of them because they know nothing is going to happen to them. And it just really irritates me, really irritates me.
Many act more like an occupying force or a gang than a group meant to uphold the law. There is no questioning their authority. There is no accountability. There is no accountability. I mean, what else can be said? They can get away with murder, quite literally. You've got police officers that are found to have slept with underage women. You've got laws that have been proposed to allow police officers to sleep with prostitutes and informants. I mean, it's just gone completely batshit crazy.
But we tolerate it. We tolerate it as African Americans. We don't say crap about it. I mean, we complain that the cops are doing this and doing that, but we don't protest. Sometimes I feel like integration did us wrong because we lost focus on what we were fighting for. We don't fight no more. It happens. Al Sharpton comes on TV for a couple of days, says what he got to say, and it's over with.
And I have to agree with Reggie because I'm a big believer in if you're gonna complain, bring something to the table.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying for people to sit there and, excuse my language, to bitch and moan and blah blah blah, and I said, okay, what are you doing? What are you doing? I said, okay, go out there, protest, call the police department. People that have all these degrees, provide some free cultural training. I'm saying that you need to change the culture of the police department. And because when you look at it, a lot of police departments are reactive. So they're not going to change unless they're forced to change. And you have a small percentage that change because they realize change is good. They realize change is necessary. And you also have to look at the community in which you serve. If your community is 80 or 70% African American and your police force is 90%, you're going to have some problems. I'm saying you look at, I originally from Birmingham. And when you go through the museum, Birmingham was about 70% African American, and the police force was 100% white. This was back in the 50s and 60s. So, do you think that, look at the injustice right there, and it's evident, through the history. So, I think when you look at the hiring process, it needs to be reflective of the population in which you serve, because by doing that, you can indirectly bring about some cultural awareness, some cultural change, and you can strengthen those bonds. And then we can hopefully, erase some of this injustices that have been happening. But that really starts with, a change in culture within, certain police departments. It's not all of them.
And I feel so sorry for these parents because they don't have any support from the African American community when it comes to shooting their loved ones. It's tempered support at the best. It lasts for a couple of weeks and then it's over with. Now, the day that verdict came out on the officer for Eric Garner, well, the verdict wasn't no verdict, but they didn't have enough evidence to charge him. So say little fat boy in D.C. looking like Pittsburgh Doughboy called Barr, him and his Justice Department. There should have been 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 10,000 people down conversion on the City Hall in New York, okay? It was just a handful of people out there representing Eric Garner's family. After that verdict, people in New York should have went down there and protested. And that's where I have a problem at. Because in the 60s and 70s, we were protesting and we were burning. and we've lost that fire to go out and make our voices heard. And that's what disappoints me, because we're showing our young people that, hey, it's okay. Nothing's going to happen to them. Few of y'all going to get killed before you get 21 or 25. It's okay. We just don't have any backbone now. We just don't have any backbone when it comes to raising our voices about this in the community.
But I think the other thing we need to look at, and I'm not necessarily talking about the Eric Garners of the world that didn't do anything, wasn't justified. But when we as a people in our own community are shooting at one another, like I look at what happened in Birmingham, I think it was yesterday, a couple of days ago, 4-year-old girl in her own house getting some juice, gets shot in the head by a stray bullet from something that happened outside. And we are doing things to ourselves that gives those police officers who are not culturally conditioned the ammunition to treat us the way that we should not be treated because of things like that. Imagine, and I just posed this question to one of you, or actually both of you. If that was your child or your cousin or whatever, and that white police officer, or it could be a black police officer, it really doesn't make a difference, found that person who shot that little girl, didn't go through due process, beat them to a pulp, would you be offended?
You probably wouldn't. You probably say they got what they deserve. Okay.
Yeah. And the reason I say that is because I think that's how a vast majority, and I wouldn't say all white people, but people who have this negative perception of African Americans feel.
We all deserve it.
When we do something, we just deserve it. You should have obeyed. You should have complied.
Yeah.
Well, if Eric Garner just put his hands up, they would have never, or if Castile would have just kept his hands up, he said too much, he talked too much.
You can comply and still wind up dead in jail, as we see happening with a greater frequency as well too. So it's not that simple.
But it's been a breakdown. It's been a breakdown of the family unit in the African American community. Okay, this is why I say that. You got women out here now having children before they're 18 and 19. So they grow up with the children. When the children come of age, they are friends with the children. If you will go back and really examine and look at a lot of these young people that are committing these crimes with guns, you'll probably find an 18-year-old that has a 40-year-old mother. Okay. And the 40-year-old mother's probably a grandmother, because the 18-year-old kid done had a kid already. So, and then it's not a lot of male support in a lot of households because the father isn't there. Because so where does who's the family? The family is the gangbangers that they hang out with. Okay. And that's where it starts. So they already done figured out in their minds they're not going to live to get 25. So they really don't give a hoot about what they do. So if you have a beef with one person of another gang, how you gonna handle that beef? When I was coming up, we beat each other up with our fists and then be hugging each other the next day. It was no big deal. Now, if there's a beef in the streets, you're gonna get killed the next day or soon thereafter. We've got to figure out how to bring that family unit back together.
Well, the other thing we have to look at, I got to defend our women, is that you have young men that, for whatever reason, has been embedded in their brain that a rite of passage is that you have to not use a condom. You persuade her with smooth talk, and then you get her pregnant. So it's a two-way street. It's not necessary, it's not necessary females just saying, "Hey, do this and I get pregnant." It's a 50-50 split, and we have to encourage and educate both the male and the female to look at the long run versus the short term. You can't get caught up in the moment because that moment can be gone like that, or that moment can last a long time. And you're like, when is this moment ever going to end? I didn't want 1 kid, 2 kids, 3 kids, 4 kids, 4 different daddies. Or the male said, I didn't want 4 kids by 4 different mamas. But guess what? Because you got caught up in the moment and you've been conditioned that this is the man thing to do, then thus we've broken up that family unit.
But you know, I mean, that I agree with both of you. We do need to focus on family. We do need to reestablish the foundations of our communities. But that isn't by itself an excuse for the way police officers treat people in the Black community. You have entire communities of meth heads and white crackheads in other states and whatnot. But you don't see the cops going off and shooting people indiscriminately. It's, again, you do have lots of people of different nationalities getting abused by police officers in this country, but there just does seem to be a disproportionate amount who are people of color. Their perception of us existed long before the change in our communities. We've been criminalized and demonized for the last 200 years, if not longer. You have clean-cut men in suits that get shot and manhandled by the police. Creating a nuclear family is not going to solve that.
And I think we also have to look at how society views crimes when it comes to race, either crimes or habits. Like when you look at the opiate crisis, and it's not really laughable, but it's laughable how it's a national health crisis when heroin and crack been in the city for years.
And who brought it there?
And they're called criminals, drug heads, whatever. But now that it's out there
in the white community,
then all of a sudden it's a national health crisis. You know, they're ODing, blah, 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 and they're getting millions of dollars to fight this. I mean, even the police department, and I don't know what the thing is called, but I guess equivalent to an EpiPen, they get to use that when people OD, but that's not given to them in the inner city. That's given to them in suburbia.
Yeah. Well, it's called culling the herd in the inner city.
So, I think when we look at that, it needs reform. I said, because being addicted to drugs is a sickness.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't necessarily make you a criminal. It's a sickness.
Well, what it comes down to,
like a health issue.
Another thing you got to look at too, it's a legal way of lynching Black men. Okay, when you shoot them. Okay, for the longest they were lynching us. Okay, and then police officers can indiscriminately shoot us. Okay, and get away with it. So police killings is just, for me, a modern day way of lynching Black men.
Well, and for non-police officers, it's the stand your ground legislation.
Oh yeah. Like the knucklehead down in that shot Trayvon Martin, the racist little pig. He's trying to be a daggone community block captain, whatever he calls himself, crime watcher, and he gonna try to take the law into his own hands. Just because the young man had a hoodie on. Look how many hoods we've had to look at over a lifetime. These white boys walking around here with white hoods on their head, and a Black man can't wear no hoodie on his head. It's BS. You got a individual in the White House with a hood on his head, and the Republicans seem to accept it. But you never hear him comment on nothing when it comes down to the killing of African Americans by police officers. So that shows me where his train of thought is.
Well, this is kind of what I want to. For me, I guess as we got about a little less than 30 minutes. What we understand that there's several instances of injustice that's going on. So, what are we going to do to help? I'm saying at this point, the only thing we can do is help the police department be better police department. Remember, it's a very small percentage. I use Charles County as a model, and of course, Reggie's been here longer than I have. but he can attest that it's gotten much better from the time that you hear to now. And a lot of that is attributed to because we have an African-American sheriff serving his second term. So who, I know him personally, but I know that he has things in place to combat, the make sure that police officers are doing their job correctly. They're not out here targeting African Americans, but African Americans, we don't need to put ourselves in a situation where we are a target, meaning that if it's 3 o'clock in the morning and 4 of you sitting around a store that's closed, most likely you up to no good. So we need to be not only constructive, but we also need to ensure that we're not putting ourselves in a situation where they can have probable cause. And I think that, we look at probable cause is a gray area, very, very gray area, because you have to have probable cause for the most part to want to search somebody. So,
well, for
if
some
you sit
people,
on a
being
corner,
black is probable cause.
yeah, but that's not probable cause. So, and I understand what you're saying. So when you look at, say, the situation, I think it happened in Montgomery County. Now, don't get me wrong, the guy was wrong for selling drugs, whatever, but you saw the white cop basically take his knee or whatever and bang the boy's head against the ground. Oh, that was unnecessary. He was already handcuffed.
And he got charged too.
Yeah, yeah.
One
He
of
still got to get
the
charged. He still got to get charged, but
yeah.
they may throw it out because now, guess what? A lawsuit is coming.
Well, he got charged, and 9 times out of 10, he's probably going to lose his job because it was all over the TV.
And get hired by another municipality. Big deal.
You could see he was definitely abusing that young man. Drugs or no drugs, the young man didn't deserve what he got. Okay.
Getting fired isn't sufficient when you can be rehired in another municipality, and we see it happen all the time. If you get fired for abuse of power, for manhandling people, for misusing your gun or abusing civilians, you should not be allowed to be a police officer in the entire country, period, full stop. Changing municipalities does not change your demeanor, your philosophy, or your approach. It doesn't change who you are. So all they're doing is shifting dirty laundry to another state or another city, and it's ridiculous. But to speak to one of your earlier points, Derek, I remember in the 80s, or even younger, there were a few vacant lots over by where NYU dorms are now. And like the Little Rascals, my friends and I used to play in those vacant lots, and we would build, I guess the city version of a treehouse with discarded materials. And I remember thinking at that age that there were very few options for places to go or things to do for children or teens or young adults, unless you had money, unless you were of means. And if we want people to get away from the corners and drinking 40s or hanging out outside of closed bodegas, if they're not up to something bad, then we need to find a way in our communities to give them something to do to keep them interested, which will keep them off the streets and hopefully less of a target.
What I wanted to do, I wanted to read, I guess, a couple of comments. It's a Colleen, and I hope I pronounced the name wrong. I mean, right, if I
Rive.
Rive?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it said, there has been a breakdown in families across the country, all nationalities and religions. So we had touched on that when we were talking about the African-American community, but I definitely agree. I'm saying there is a breakdown, but because there's a breakdown, like you said, Shara, it's not justification for bad policing. It just isn't. Another comment.
She made a further point to say that that's where bad cops are coming from. Like it's not
Yeah.
helping in their development.
Yeah, I wasn't saying that. What I was saying, without just reading the comment. But where do bad cops come from? I think what happens is that they come in as a good cop, and they're influenced by a bad cop, or they're influenced by a bad situation. And once again, I said it at the beginning, those cops that know those guys are bad cops, that are silent, you're just as guilty as that bad cop. So I just don't get it. It's like for the military. If I know that this guy is mentally unstable, I'm going to report you. Because now you have an M16 in Afghanistan, and you're mentally unstable. I reported someone. I reported him. I said he is mentally unstable. He's walking around with live ammo, upset because he can't shoot anybody. He wants to go out there and shoot some Afghans. I said, something's wrong with you, man.
Yeah.
So, I don't know what goes on in the police locker room, but I'm almost certain before that cop goes out and does something he's not supposed to, he's talked about it in that locker room.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's for damn sure.
Well, we got to figure this thing out. We don't have any so-called civil rights leaders now. Nobody's out there pushing an agenda for the African American community. So we got to figure out something we're going to do. Because it can't be business as usual with these racist white cops that continue on killing young black men. And it's going to continue on until someone really puts their foot down and says it's got to stop. And the police departments have to do a better job at recruiting and training these people and giving these guys a psychological test that they need to have to weed out these inferior racist cops that we have.
And look, we talk about white cops, but believe me, there's some trifling black cops in there too. I've been around them too. they get the gun, and all of a sudden, I was like, brother, I ain't your brother. I'm like, whoa. And you think you're gonna get a break? And sometimes they're worse than.
Well, they get indoctrinated. They get indoctrinated just like everybody else does.
But they get indoctrinated till a white cop kicks their butt, and then they come running back to the black neighborhood asking for our assistance.
Yeah, because I'm almost certain that the cop that was in Minnesota that got convicted, it wasn't a large outcry, Blue Lives Matter and all that.
No.
It wasn't no.
How about no outcry?
Yeah.
Not just.
Now, I don't know whether or not he did it or not. I don't know. I haven't looked at the case. I haven't looked at the evidence. But my thing is, just imagine if the tables were turned.
They would have planted something in that car and justified it like they've done so many times before.
Yep.
Hey guys, we got Jackie on.
Hey Jackie, welcome back.
Where you at, Jackie?
Hey, how's everybody doing?
Man, how you doing, Jackie?
I'm doing well.
So what's on your mind, Jackie?
It's just it's almost mind-boggling. You don't know what to say anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, like what I shared, I'm sure hopefully you heard about it. The link that I shared in the chat about the little boy who was the 10-year-old little boy that was charged with aggravated assault
for dodgeball. Yeah.
I think we lost Jackie.
Yeah, she was talking about an article where some kids were playing dodgeball and a white boy got hit in the face, I think, with the dodgeball, and the little boy that hit him with the ball was a young African American child at 10 years old, and he got arrested for aggravated assault.
Oh, crap. Okay.
Yeah. But again, that works, because there's this pipeline from school to jail. So that's sort of thematically in keeping with what they're doing with people of color in this country.
Well, I don't know. I'm disgusted, upset, bothered by the whole situation because I'm afraid it's something that's going to keep on going on for a while. Especially with how DOJ is handling cases now, and when the little Weasel took over DOJ, all the investigations that were being done through the Obama administration ceased to be, completed because they felt like none of the officers were doing anything wrong. So I mean, you got to have a DOJ that's supportive of the community and will, through that civil rights division, look at what's going on, and that's not happening. is truly not happening. Okay, Jack is back.
Okay, hopefully we won't have any more issues. Hopefully I'm in a good place this time.
Hear you clearly.
But like I was saying, the link that I put to the story in the chat room about the 10-year-old little boy who got charged with aggravated assault for playing dodgeball. Because the little boy, one of the little boys that they were playing with, he has medical issues. Now, how do you figure you charging a little boy with aggravated assault? How is mother that has the son that has the medical issues not telling her son, son, do you get the concept of dodgeball? You supposed to let the ball miss you, son.
Not take a direct hit.
Huh?
Not take a direct hit from the ball.
Do you get the concept of dodgeball? You don't seem to get it. Now, if you don't know how to play dodgeball, you're going to dodge this game is what it is. You're going to stick to hopscotch.
Why did the teachers allow him to play if he's somewhat disabled from understanding the very simple rules of dodgeball?
I don't know, but I don't understand how it's not clear that the onus is on the mother with the son with the issues. How are we charging a 10-year-old little boy with aggravated assault as if he intended to throw the ball at the boy, which ain't the case.
Or at least intended harm. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
I mean,
no words.
Talk about stupidity on stupidity.
But that's the treatment black men or black kids or blacks in general are faced with. You know, here's another killing. Jaquavon Slayton, 20, was killed in Fort Worth on June 11th. Officers claim Slayton had a gun, but have not provided any proof. Shot him 10 times. But where's the gun at? You know, that's the bull that we're dealing with here in America as black men. You know.
And Jacqueline, if I could ask you a question before we start to wrap up. And in your community, do you see the rise, or do you see it? Well, how police relations in the community where you're at? And are they good, bad? And if they're bad, what are some things that make them bad? If they're good, what are some things that make it good?
Well, Lord knows there's always room for improvement. It's just it's because definitely me, I don't want to put onus obviously on all cops, because unfortunately, you know, there's some good, and I know personally some good cops out there. But I tell you, there really needs to be a serious overhaul of the police department in general to get these bad cops out of there. I mean, that's the bottom line.
Okay.
And that's, I don't doubt going on everywhere.
Okay. Well, we definitely appreciate you being on and sharing your insight and your views. What's going on? We're about to wrap up, so we can try to get our parting shots. But we definitely appreciate your continued support, and look forward to the next topic next week.
I sure will, and thank you for having me on. Y'all take care and have a good night.
Okay, bye-bye, Jack.
All right, so as we wrap up, And Reggie, you probably should go last. And the reason I say this is because I respect age. No, but in all seriousness, you know, we put a lot of onus on the federal government to fix our problems. And I'm not going to sit around and wait for anybody. You know, fixing problems starts at home within the community. So we are fortunate. Me and Reggie live in pretty much the same area. You may be governed by two police departments, La Plata as well as Charles County. But we're in a unique situation where police and community relations are doing okay. Could they be better? Yes. But we're not experiencing the things that some of our fellow brothers and sisters experiencing in these other cities, and it may be totally different where Char's at. But what I will say is that I'm a firm advocate for community policing, and the more that we see police doing positive things and we invite them to functions and we hang out and play, like my son, he plays basketball with them sometimes, shoots hoops. We're like, hey, what's going on? That's what we need to do. And if we continue to do that, I'm hoping that we can, erase, the injustices that are going on. But it starts a community at a time. So, Shara, what's your insight on it?
I think that this is a fight that needs to be fought on multiple levels. It's not a black and white solution, no pun intended. We definitely need to start on the community level with our interactions with the police department. But I also think, like Jacqueline said, there needs to be a cleaning house, if you will. If you're wearing white supremacist tattoos all over your body or whatever, I think that should disallow you from being a member of the force automatically, because it says out of the gate that you're not going to be interested in protecting and serving the totality of the citizens in your municipality. I think that they need to improve the psychological evaluations that they're giving some of these police officers, because some of them have no business being police officers. Either they're too scared and too willing to shoot to kill, or they go in there with a narcissistic sort of bullyish mindset that they can do whatever they want. They're kind of like the occupant in the White House. And I do think, like Reggie said in the beginning, as a community, we need to have our voices heard and be louder. And if we could recapture some of the intelligence that we had in our numbers during the civil rights movements, our marches and our protests would be more successful than they have been in the last several years. The problem with modern protests is I find that the narrative gets usurped by another group, and then the media runs with it and spins it into something else completely opposite of what the intent of that march or protest was about. So I think we have a lot of work ahead of us. And in terms of good police officers, I happen to know some, I'm related to some. I also know a lot of people who went to the academy who I thought, Jesus, you have no business being a police officer. And they made it through. And they got the badge and they got the gun. So something in the screening process is not working. Or maybe to the point, it is working. And they're getting exactly the type of people in blue that they want. But we certainly do need to be more vigilant. Reggie, on to you.
It does my heart good when I see police officers on Facebook or on TV, getting involved in the community, dancing and playing basketball and something. I think that's the positive attitude that kids should see, okay? But then you turn around the next day and you have an officer that kills a young black man, and that's what the kids got to look at. So it's very confusing for our young people now. As far as building trust, it's going to be tough for them to build trust for a police officer. Regardless if that police officer is walking around with a halo around his head, it's going to be hard for our young people to identify with our officer and have trust in that officer. As I've been stating all night long, we have to get up and get down to protesting and holding these officers accountable and making them disappear once they've been charged or found that they've done something out of the norm. Okay, whether it's beating a person, harassing a person, or even killing a person, they have got to be put on notice, and we've got to figure out a way to keep them from, as you say, Sharon, going from police department to police department, getting jobs. Because the same thing they did in one city, they're eventually going to do it in another city. Because that's that mentality.
Yeah.
And frankly, I'm getting tired of all these shootings of our young black men by police officers. You know, and it all boils down to racism.
Blasio.
David Duke said, "Look, we can't wear our white robes on the force. You know, we wear the blue uniform. Still do what you got to do." And I think a lot of it is coming from where these cops, they can't lynch us, they're going to shoot us. Because there's no way you shoot a young man 75 times or 30 times or 27 times. There is no way.
How scared must you be, or how filled with hate must you be to pull the trigger that many times? Either one speaks to a problem that should probably result in you not being a police officer or on the force.
Wow, they have the gun. Hey, let's unload. We got 15 rounds. Let's go for it. And that's the attitude. That's the mindset. You know, in Memphis, Tennessee, how do U.S. Marshals shoot a young man that's standing in his family's yard 20 times? And he's no threat to him.
Yeah.
No, that's the kind of
his existence is a threat. That's the problem with these people.
And that's the BS that we face with now. Until we go back to the mindset of the strong civil rights movement we had in the late 50s, 60s, and 70s, this crap is going to continue on. You know, just because we live in the suburbs in our nice houses does not give us a pass. We have got to stay involved in the politics and in the movement. And I think that's what we've lost today. We don't get involved in the politics and the movement anymore. No, we say they'll take care of it.
I think some of that is attributed to because they think that their voice doesn't matter, their vote doesn't matter. They don't see the instant results of what would happen. And to be honest with you, some people that elected, they just straight lie.
Yeah.
So, you know, they all about self. I'm saying we got that in Charles County. It is about self. Because I always say, what were you doing before you were elected? If you were doing all these things and you were big in the community, then I can understand. But now that you got some power, now I'm big in the community now, and I'm using my position. No, you weren't even doing this before. So it wasn't like you were an advocate for what's going on. If you was an advocate, you don't let a title hold you back for fighting injustice, for fighting for what's right. That I do know. And I think that's what sometimes gets lost with some of these elected officials, whether it's local level, state level, or national level. If you're not willing to go out there from day one, you only coming out there to get a photo op. I say, go sit the hell down. I think because you're useless to me. You're useless.
Mm-hmm.
I get a photo op from Google. I can just cut and paste you, and I'm saying I don't need you to have for a photo op.
That's how I always felt about Al Sharpton growing up in the city. You know, he wasn't a constant voice, a constant presence. He showed up when there was an event, and sometimes he'd stick his foot in his mouth, make assumptions about the event before all the facts were out. But to me, he always straddled that fence between opportunist and genuine civic rights leader. And we need more leaders. We need modern, young, fresh blood in the movement.
Yeah, because what has happened to Black Lives Matter?
They still there.
A hashtag. Is there an organization? Is there a 501c3? Is there a director?
No,
they ran out of money.
That's what happened. It's a T-shirt.
And if they would come together and pick a president, pick a committee to get the nonprofit status, and work as an organized organization, they could have some effect. It could be effective. You know, but having an organization in one city and somebody else doing another city, they're never going to get anything accomplished.
Yeah, if they could unite us as a true voting bloc in the country, nobody would be able to ignore us anymore.
That's right. But We sleeping good in the suburbs. And that's what's going on. Right, Tony? Hey, what's up with the grasshoppers?
We are invaded.
You got that right. Oh, they were painful.
Painful.
Oh, they're everywhere.
Yeah, they're painful when you walk in and they just hit you right in your face. If you know,
Ugh.
going all up in your hair, look like you got green highlights in your hair.
Actually, they're not even of color. They're the gray ones, the ugly.
No, I saw green. I saw green. I saw
You
some
saw
green.
the green ones?
Yeah,
And
I
you
saw some
made
green ones.
now you got me
You know.
wanting to scratch.
Yeah, and I saw some characters that look like grasshoppers down Fremont Street.
Yeah, oh, it's a bunch of those. It is a bunch of those. Oh my gosh. Great show, you guys.
What
Great
fast?
show. Yeah. I think it was a needed conversation. Thank you, Reggie, for bringing it to the forefront. A lot of stuff we got to clean up. A lot of stuff, and I'm gonna try and make this brief. But as you guys know, I do the promo every week before you guys go on air, and topics like these, things that we see in the news that is going on right now before our very eyes, it starts to build something up in me. And I'm not going to say it's wholeheartedly anger, but it's a deep passion for making things right. And I am at my wit's end with people who will sit and complain and will not lift a finger or lift a foot to either, vote, use a finger to vote, or they don't lift a foot to march. I'm tired. I am tired of it. So I am hoping that we can kind of incorporate news with some of the travesties that this country is facing. As people, we're facing these travesties. We're living them every day. So I'm calling people out. I am really calling you out. If I see that you can go hang out in a club, but you can't be a part of your community and building up people, we're going to have a problem. We're going to have a problem. And I don't play. I just don't.
Yeah, and I say the same thing. I did a little video, I think yesterday, whatever it was. But if you're gonna sit up there and complain, and you're not willing to come to the table with a solution, then shut the freak up.
Let me say it. Shut the fuck up. How's that, Sharon?
It's not a show until Tony's on here speaking the truth.
No, but I'm serious. I'm all about, trying to look the best I can, trying to do the best, being in the know and all of this. Hey, I'm like everybody else. Okay. But when it comes to things that have to do with our community and how we are facing I'm going to say the utmost of police brutality in our time today. And we see a man, what we want to call a man, sitting as our commander in chief, who is basically denigrating everything that we are as human beings because of the color of our skin. I got a problem with you if you don't have a problem. I just do.
Yeah. I started last week, and I just, the last 3 years have been a quarter inch of straw above the waterline dealing with those Trump nonsense. And last week, and I just sort of plateaued and got into back and forth with somebody. And I said, you know what? I don't need to prove to you why I think Trump and his administration is a racist. If it is not painfully obvious to you by now, nothing I say is going to make a difference. So rather than allowing your toxicity to continue to exist in my sphere, I'm going to block you. So I started blocking people on Facebook. And yesterday or 2 days ago, the most asinine argument from somebody, a fellow African-American, and I was very surprised. And I'm still trying to decide if this is a troll or not. but because
Is it a difference?
He's very pro-Trump, posts a lot of things that are negative about the African-American community. Everything's our fault, yada, yada. And I posted an article about Kushner and his slumlord, buildings in Baltimore. And this guy was like, "Oh, you probably just heard about that today. Nobody knew anything about this before it was mentioned by the liberal media." I was like, "No, actually, he's been known as a slumlord in New York and other states for a long time." And I actually interviewed somebody.
Yeah.
I actually interviewed somebody that used to work for the organization and quit because their integrity wouldn't allow them to keep working for a company that was doing things that were so shady and underhanded. So said, I have first person experience with some of this.
Right.
Well, I'm going to go look on your Facebook feed and see if I see evidence of this. I said, that makes no kind of sense. I don't post the totality of my knowledge and personal experience on Facebook. So you're not seeing something there posted 2 years ago or a year ago or something I learned 4 months ago doesn't prove your point. And he just went on and on and on about it.
Yeah, but you know what? I'm going to say this last thing, and it does have to do with the experience that you had with the person on Facebook. Every day that we become more and more influenced with social media, you are going to run into people like that. And I don't want anybody to ever feel that they can be told that they're being intimidated, or they can be told that just because they're standing up for right, that they're wrong. Okay? Because I think that Ray Charles can see what's going on right now. It's fucking wrong. And if someone attacks you in social media for standing up, because we've got, immigrants who are being housed well over the time period that they're supposed to be, not fed,
housed.
Yeah. If you can look at this and say that this is okay under this administration, then you can kiss my ass, okay? Because I'm not intimidated by you. And you can never tell me about my own moral compass. You need to then question your own.
Yeah.
And then leave it alone. Leave it alone. You don't have to get into a fighting match with these crazy ass people.
Absolutely not. I'm done. So I started blocking them.
That is what we are working with. That is what we're dealing with. And we just now have to, as a people, learn how to stand up to it. And I'm not saying try and take this moral high ground. You don't have to do that. You can tell somebody, kiss my ass.
Or have a nice day somewhere else.
Why you want me to leave? MF, why don't you go?
Or you can be like me. I got to go real soon, so wrap it up.
It's that easy. I know what you're doing. Whatever. Anyway, so great show, you guys. I'm so glad that you hit this topic, and I want everybody to understand that you come back here every Tuesday night at 5:30 p.m. Pacific, 7:30 Central, and 8:30 on the East Coast. Make sure that you follow Real World News TV right here on Facebook. If you've missed out on any of the past shows, go to our website at hottopicstalkradio.com. There you'll find all of the shows from beginning of this show to right now. I want to invite you to come on back tomorrow night on Hot Topics Talk Radio here with me. I was going to say me, Tony. Yeah, me, Tony, Bree Love, Yvonne Baker, and Mr. Chris Smith. Tomorrow we got a great show lined up for you. It's not for the faint of heart, okay? And it's not an attack, men, but the topic is, or a question, you prefer yourself over me?
Didn't you attack men last week?
I know where you're going. Good night, Tony.
I prefer this.
So come on back here on Hot Topics Talk Radio with me, Yvonne Baker, and Chris Smith for that funny topic. And we're going to have a good time. Thank you so much for joining in. Thank you for your continued support. Thank you, Jacqueline, for joining in tonight on camera. And we will see you back here next week on Tuesday night. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, all.
Peace and blessings.